Hello and welcome to Behind the Bearcat. This is the podcast where the Northwest Missouri State University Career Services Office chats with Northwest faculty, staff, students, alumni, and friends to hear about their career journeys, how they got to where they are, and how they became Bearcats. I'm Career Services Assistant Director Travis Klein.
And I'm Hannah Christian, the Director of Career Services here at Northwest. And today's guest on our show, little drum roll, is
My name is Mo, Mahammad Hajiyev, and I go with Mo. Um, and I'm International Student Success and Outreach Coordinator here at Northwest at International Enrollment Center.
Welcome.
welcome. I'm really glad that
Thank you.
you introduced yourself with your title because I literally had no idea what your title was. Um,
Yes.
so can you explain to us, because there might be others as well who don't know what that means, can you explain to
Mhm.
us kind of what your role is here on campus?
Yeah, sure. It's a brand new role, so it's just created. And it's mainly focusing on helping international students succeed by advocating for their needs, facilitating their integration into university community, and also at the same time connecting them with all the resources that's available in our campus. And I also do orientations and events and things like that to support our students.
So, were you an international student at Northwest? I'm interested. You
Ye-
mentioned it's a new role, so how did you happen into Northwest and into
yes.
that role both?
Yes, I started at Northwest in 2020, but even though I couldn't make it here because it was very hectic times during the COVID times, I got into Northwest. I was really happy, excited, and I was finally coming to start my college life. And then COVID hits, and I couldn't come here. So it was about a year and a half that I had to study online because of COVID. Then I came in, and yes, I was an international student. By the way, I'm from Azerbaijan, Baku. I like to say that. And yeah, and I started this job. This was newly created, and I didn't know about this position, but who's our director now, Thomas Merlaw, he told me about the position. I mean, we were talking once in a while when we were seeing each other in cafeteria and things like that. And he told me about it, and he was like, "Yeah, if you want, you can go ahead and apply." And he was like, "Yeah, you would be a great fit," and I did, and I went ahead and applied, and here I am.
So, can I back up just a little bit?
Mhm.
A couple of questions. How did you find Northwest? Because I mean, that's always
Mhm.
interesting to me whenever speaking to other people, people from other continents who find Northwest. And how did you decide what you wanted to study? What was your major, and how did you decide what you wanted to study?
So, um, my dad really wanted me to do something IT related. And I did not want to do something IT related, but I knew that there is some kind of need, there is a demand for learning technology to have technological skills. And that's why I decided I'm also a little business minded, so that's why I decided to integrate technology into business. And I thought that I would be great at management information systems. So I'm doing both business classes and computer science classes. So doing both together. And that's how I ended up choosing this major. And I also did how I found Northwest was I was doing a lot of research on which colleges have this major because this was not very popular major. And it's still not as popular as others. But I was searching, and one of my friends actually he had applied to this university, and he told me he was like, yeah, this college I saw they have this degree. If you want to, you can go ahead and apply, and I did, and I got in. So yeah, that's how I found Northwest. A lot of web search.
You mentioned kind of your position being, an advocate for international students and their needs. And we've had other, folks who were international students here. What are so, like, when you came to Northwest, what were some of the things that you kind of saw that now you get to work with directly in this role? Like needs that, maybe international students
Mhm.
have that our domestic students don't even have to think about.
There are actually a lot of things that international students experience that domestic stu most of them don't. Small things such as like we're traveling from different continents to come here, and first things first, we have language barriers, and it's. You think that before I came to United States, when I first came here, I was like 15 years old, and when you're back home and you speak English with people from your country and you think that your English is perfect until the time you first speak to a native speaker. And then you realize that your listening is not as good, and you when you speak you cannot express yourself because native speakers, they talk with the accent and everything, so it's kind of challenging to understand, and that's one of the first things that I experienced. Things such as language barriers, traveling long distance and coming to a culture and country that you have no idea about literally is really challenging. And you come in and you don't know anyone, your family is not here to support you, and you're on your own now. So all that, and plus you're being jet lagged, again, cultural differences, and you come here and you arrive in the airport, and I have done this myself, and I see all international students going through this. And now we have a service by International Women's Center that we pick up all the new students and even returning students. We offer them shuttle services, but transportation is one of the issues that I know that in United States, it's very common for everyone to have a car by the time they're 60. But it's not the same for all the countries. And when you travel from, in my case, from Azerbaijan, and you come in here and you're a student, so you probably cannot afford a car for now, and or you don't even have a license. Oh, you think about, oh, how am I gonna get license? I'm gonna get car, and you think that, especially, for example, in my country, public transportation is such a big thing. But here, it's almost impossible to find public transportation. So all that, it's actually interesting for me to work with international students now to solve their problems in my best ability, because I have firsthand experienced those challenges myself, and it's definitely different than what domestic students experience.
Can you tell us, you mentioned public transportation is
Mhm.
a lot more developed, and it is pretty much everywhere else rather than Maryville, Missouri. But can we just take a little pause? Can you tell us some highlights or some information about Azerbaijan? Because I know that this is a very uncommon country to be able to meet people from. And so this is such an opportunity for us to be able to learn a little bit more about you and about where you came from.
Sure. Yeah. Azerbaijan is a small country. I will see if I can show you. Right around, right around here. And it's a small country with about 10 million people. It's a transcontinental country, so it's located right in between Eastern Europe and Western Asia. So it's very my friends and I, we still debate which one it is, but we still don't know. And I'm from the capital city. It's called Baku. And we are famous for hosting Formula events recently. Maybe some viewers will know. But yeah, and Baku is pretty big. So it was a big change for me to come from Baku and to live in Maryville, because Baku has almost about 3 million population. So it's a big city with sophisticated public transportation and more crowded. I will say more walkable. And yeah, and there I think I might be the first person from Azerbaijan to study here at Northwest. But yeah, it's pretty beautiful country. On the north we have mountains with a lot of snow. When you go south, it's a lot warmer. So I think that we have um, all the we have 9 climates out of 11 or something like that, if I'm not wrong. So it changes a lot in the country. If you go to north, it's going to get a lot colder. If you come to south, it's a little warmer there. So yeah, it's all about Azerbaijan.
That's kind of crazy because if you think about, right, you're Western Asia, Eastern Europe, 9 out of 11 climates. For such a small country, you have to be very
Mhm.
flexible.
Mhm.
Yes, yes, actually, it's located in a very interesting spot in the world. So I can tell that in terms of geopolitics and in terms of physical location, it's in a very interesting place.
Okay, so let's go back to kind of your role here as an advocate for international students. What are the surprising things maybe in the time frame that you've been operating as an advocate? What are some of the things that have surprised you about working full-time on campus versus being a student?
Hmm. That's a great question, and let me think about it. Because I worked as I started off as in SAFRA in University Police Department. That was my start point when I first came here. I started working there, loved it there, was amazing, but I got a better opportunity to work in residential life, and I worked as an RA. For about 2 years. And at the same time, I also worked as teaching assistant. I would say that these jobs, even though they were student positions, I can tell that they taught me a lot. And this is one of the things I always recommend international students. I tell them try to get a job after a while. You think that you are able to manage your study loads, all your courses. Try to get a job and try to see what it looks like because it prepares them better for their future career and they will have an idea of what working is like in the United States because it's not the same. It's different, completely different culture. I think one of the things that is surprising to me is um, opportunities. I think that I'm very flexible at my job and flexible in terms of I think that my office is pretty open to different ideas, different events, or like I've never recommended something. I tell, hey, let's do this. I've never been told no. So that's one of the surprising things. But working in Azerbaijan, I have worked in Azerbaijan before. I would say it's a lot more strict. There are certain rules that you have to follow. But one of the surprising things that I found working full time here at Northwest is that how um, flexible it can be and how especially for my position, it's brand new position, so I have to build it from the scratch. We have to build it from the scratch. So it's interesting how I can just integrate my ideas what I think that is good for international student, and it's accepted by everyone. That's one of the surprise. I had the same experience when I was working as a student employee, but I find it really, I would say, rewarding. It's very rewarding to be able to do what what it's up to your creativity, you know. So that's one of the things I find surprising, but in a good way. In a good way.
I think that is a really great way to put it because I think a lot of people don't understand the amount of creativity that we get to put into our work on a daily basis. I mean, we're doing a podcast right now.
Mhm.
Is that on my job
Yes.
description? No. but we've been
Yes.
able to, have the opportunity to do that. And
Hmm.
it is a really rewarding experience to be able to do
Hmm.
that.
And I think though,
Yes.
So,
taking student feedback too, I think, all of our offices are so dependent on student labor because we're, a public university, dependent a little bit on federal and state funding. So we're always trying to do more with less. So we let the students really kind of do a lot of things, and then their input's very valuable. So I think that students don't think about that when they're applying for those on-campus jobs, that, not only is it a way to earn money and get some experience, but you influence the way that that office is going to operate and the way that they
Hmm.
do things moving forward and the events they offer. And I know in our office, our students are vital. Like we could not do the things we do if we didn't have our student employees. So, I think that that is kind of an untalked about thing on campus that is very valuable. Is
Yes.
not only do you get a job, but you also, you're part of the team. Like we consider our student employees, they're not full-time employees. We don't expect the same things of them we do full-time employees, but we take their feedback just as seriously as we do a full-time employee in a lot of things. So I think that the influence is something that is
Hmm.
unusual and is important because, I don't know that any other part-time job in Maryville has that the way that an on-campus job maybe does in some different areas. So sorry, Hannah, I cut off your question there.
well, I was just going to ask, I know a lot of international students. There have been in the past a lot of international students competing for on-campus jobs. And so maybe if you have any insight or pointers for international students about how to apply for those jobs and how to, be a good candidate for something like that.
Kind of building upon what Travis said, the student employees, I think I just want to mention that very quickly before I answer your question. I think that they're a great resource as well. Sometimes we have international students who are working in International Enrollment Center, and sometimes I'm just in my free time, I just go ask them, "Hey, what do you think? What kind of event would be?" And they have so great ideas,
Mhm.
and they're fresh, and they have great ideas and they tell me, I'm like, oh, this is amazing. I'm just gonna go ahead and do that. So yeah. And going back to your question about the jobs, I think one of the reasons that causes that competition is the legal constraints that international students have that they cannot work off campus. And I think one of those things is like I experienced, and one of the first offices that I visited was career services. And I came in, and back home we use CV. We don't use resume. So we use CV, and it's slightly different than resume. They're pretty similar. A lot of things in common. I would say CV is a lot more detailed than resume. Resume is like more shortened version, more focused version of CV. So that was one of the first things I started. I came in and I was like, yes, I'm ready. I can work now to support myself a little bit with my daily expenses. And when I was applying, I just started applying, and then I realized when I was talking to my friends, and I realized that, oh, like I wasn't supposed to submit a CV. I was supposed to submit a resume. And that's when I decided to come to career services. I was like, I need help because I keep submitting CV, but apparently there is a different version of the CV at that time for me, and that was resume. I think firstly, for international students, one of the good things to do for them is to build their resume and, if possible, cover letters. Because I think that it's a little bit challenging for us because we have international backgrounds and international work experience. It's not the same as putting it on your resume. So trying to get help from career services, if possible, to build on the resume and keep looking on for jobs on the website, on human resources website, and keeping your resume and cover letter specifically related to that job. Because I see one of the things that international students do, because I work closely with international students, I'm pretty sure there's some domestic students doing that as well. They just bring in just general resume and they submit it for literally every job, but your work experience in that resume does not relate to that job description. I think before you, I know it's hard to build a resume from scratch, but at least you can make some changes to make it more relatable to that job that you're applying to. That's one of my biggest recommendations. I try to tell our international students, building your resume relatable to the job that you're applying to.
Yeah, that's
And
really
also
good
being
advice.
prepared, yeah, and also being prepared for interview as well. Being prepared for interview. That's one of the things. I think some students apply, they get an interview, they think, oh, that's great, but they are not prepared for the interview. I think just being ready for basic questions and it can be hard when you're being asked question and to just answer it right away. But if you're prepared for it, you can be more confident in the interview as well, especially as the second language speaker.
Yeah, and I think that's hard. That adds difficulty to it. Not only is it already kind of a situation that you're nervous, but then you have the language barrier, then you have things like that. So I know one thing we see sometimes with international students is they almost over prepare for interviews, like it's not conversational because they're so practiced because of the I think it is because they're trying to overcome that language barrier sometimes. And yeah, so
Hmm.
you can be both. You can be completely underprepared, you can be overprepared. You really want it to be as natural as possible, which practice is the best way to do that. So, and we're happy to help you practice that,
Yes.
in the career services office. That's part of what we do. So you had some really good pieces of advice in there, but we always like to ask guests, especially when they transition from student to employee, like, as you work with international students, maybe if you could tell something to the incoming international students, for the fall semester coming up, in a few months, like what kind of advice would you give them, as someone who's been through the process before, and, you know, what's something that they need to know or some advice that you wish you would have had when you came in fresh?
I'll quote this.
Okay.
I'll quote it from one of our international students. Um, her name is Favor. I'm going to tell that, and she said, "Be open, and you will be surprised how many people are willing to come through for you." And this hit me because that is so true. As an international student, it can be hard sometimes to be open because you're surrounded by completely different culture, completely different people who speak different languages. But if you're open, if you're willing to express your um, ideas, express your feelings, and people will be willing to be there for you and help you. And I have experienced that firsthand with wherever I have worked. In it doesn't matter in my RA position, in university police department TA position. Once you realize that if you are open and if you want to experience um, the culture and if you want to express your culture, you will be more comfortable than just closing up to yourself, you know. So I think that will be my advice. Be open.
I think that would be my advice to domestic students as well. I've probably told this story before on some other random podcast in the past, but my one of my roommates was international, and to be able to embrace someone and to learn about, she would cook for us and she would tell us stories and we would learn Russian music, and that was such a developmental milestone for me as a domestic student to be able to learn that, like, my best of friends, my roommates and my closest people were from a completely different part of the world. That was life changing, to be honest, as a
Hmm.
college student. So I mean, I think that is a great, from both sides of the conversation, that is a great insight.
True, yeah.
Yeah.
And also we encourage our domestic students and and hopefully working on to make it possible just to exchange culture. And I think that's amazing. And I also like to tell that also international students should learn a lot about American culture because it's actually interesting. Thanksgiving or other holidays, some people don't even celebrate Christmas. Learning all that, it's so interesting. And same thing goes to domestic students. Learning about all these different cultures, holidays, and songs and all music. It's all amazing.
If someone wants to learn more about it, where can they find the international office? Like, where are you guys located on campus? Where do you have that sort of stuff?
First floor of the library. If you pass by the desk, the library desk, it's on the right. So if you want to stop by, have a chat, you can do that anytime. Or if you're interested, and we also have study abroad programs for domestic students as well. So yeah, feel free to stop by anytime, and let's have a chat.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much. Yes, this has been great.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
All right. Well, that will do it for another episode of Behind the Bearcat, and we'll talk to you next time. Hey guys, we hope you enjoyed that episode. If you did, be sure to give us a thumbs up below. That helps out. Also, if you've not done so yet, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new episode. Also, we'd love to connect with you on social media. You can find Behind the Bearcat on Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Plus, the audio podcast comes out on Fridays on all the major podcast platforms. Thanks again for watching Behind the Bearcat, and as always, we'll talk to you next time.